It is my pleasure to be here with all of you today in preparation for the peer review week in 2022 to start next Monday. The topic for discussion today is the one being shown, research integrity promoting reproducibility through peer review. But before we go deep into this topic, I would like to remind that the webinar will be recorded and that it will be available to everybody after the event. I would like to just make a note that after the event is finished, all attendees will be proposed to participate on a very short survey, just 2 questions among those that you would be asked if you would like to receive additional information on this topic from Karger publishers. And now I would like to start introducing myself and the topic and our panelists. So I'm Theresa Matthews. I am the publication manager for the whole portfolio of neurology and neuroscience at Karger. I am also the liaison researcher engagement and recognition and co-leader of an internal task force on this topic. And we are very much worried and valuing our authors, reviewers, and the leadership of the editors in our network. Next, please. So about the topic, so keeping the accuracy and integrity of the published content, it's very important to guide the future in research and also to inform clinical care and also preserving public trust in science. As a health science publisher, we are dedicated to serving the information needs of the scientific community, clinicians, and patients. And it is our strategy to cover the whole cycle of knowledge, starting with the plan of research and concluding with the transfer of high quality scientific findings to both healthcare professionals, patients, and caregivers. To achieve the proposed high quality of the content published by Karger, we care in maintaining very high standards of peer review and work in adherence with the best practices recommended by reputable organizations like the Committee on Publication Ethics. And we also find important to continually discuss and debate on the essential role that peer review plays in maintaining research quality. And that is why we are so happy to have this opportunity today to talk about the reproducibility through peer review. And then I would like to introduce you to our panelists today. Today we have with us Professor Max Cenci. Max is a clinical researcher in dentistry from Radboudumc. Sorry, I can't pronounce the name of the institution in the Netherlands, and he is also attached to the Federal University of Pelotas in Brazil. He works with clinical research and is also and it's also focused in knowledge synthesis and translation and meta research, and including promoting open science practices and the use of tools to increase the transparency in dentistry research. The next panelist with us today is Dr. Gráinne McNamara. Dr. Gráinne McNamara is the Research Integrity Publication Ethics Manager for Karger Publishers, and she focuses on developing the policies and also works in the investigations of topics related to publication ethics for all the Karger portfolio. And our third panelist today is Marco Casola, a peer of mine. So he is the publication manager for Immunology and Ophthalmology portfolio at Karger Publishers, and he is the co-leader in the International Open Science Task Force. And he cares for implementing open sciences and open access for the whole Karger portfolio. So we have prepared a set of questions or points for discussions today. And the first point that we would like to discuss today is, do we need peer review? And I would like to invite Max to start sharing your thoughts with us about this.
Thank you very much, Theresa. Thank you also, Gráinne and Marco. I'm sure that we are going to have a super nice session with lots of insightful ideas that we can add to our practices, and also maybe to help the listeners with some new insights on how to improve the whole peer review enterprise. To answer this question, the answer is pretty simple. We definitely need peer review. I think we all agree on that. We all may acknowledge that there are room for improvement on the peer review process overall, but we know that the peer review process is at the heart of the whole science enterprise, not only in medical research, medical journals, but in the whole process of producing science. And if we still have some problems with science integrity, even with the peer review process, you can imagine how bad it could be if you could just post our results on open websites without any kind of screening, any kind of external effort to really try to improve and to assure a minimal set of quality for the published science that we can trust. If we think about the recent events with the pandemic, for instance, we had quite some problem with lots of governments following advice from preprints, for instance, before peer review with misleading information. So this is a very recent example of the importance of having a peer review process, and also the importance of trying to improve. And I think the whole peer review week is about this, how to improve the peer review process and the peer review enterprise as a whole. I can talk hours about that, but I tend to talk too much, Theresa, so you can always ask me to stop also, please.
Those are very, very important takes that you exposed here, and especially when we are talking about research in health science, it is really important that whatever advice one would follow, it has been proved, and it is indeed accepted and validated by a very good number of the peers and the experts in the field. But maybe Gráinne and Marco have something to add on that as well. You want to go first, Marco?
Yeah, I can. So I also agree with Max. I mean, we definitely need peer review, and the recent example during the pandemic with a lot of preprints being taken up by the news without any peer review and then being retracted after a few months, that really didn't give a lot of stability also to the researchers, to the way the news were traveling. So we definitely need it. And I can add, as publishers, I think we are in the position where we can see as the kind of guardian of the peer review process. So it's as a publisher that we have to put in systems where we can check the peer review, see if it's done properly, thoroughly, and send it back to the authors and to the reviewers if this is not happening. So we're definitely playing a center role in kind of gatekeeping or gate guarding the peer review, and we should also, put in a kind of set of golden rules where we should teach how to do review. We should definitely instruct our reviewers and our authors on how peer review should be done, how the revised version should go, and yeah, this is the more, I think it is indeed the core of the whole publication cycle. It is long, it is a struggle for a lot of people, but we need it. There is no way out. And yeah, maybe with some help of other tools in the future, we might make it a little bit faster and less of a struggle, but we need a little bit of time to develop that. Gráinne, you can add something if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we don't even need to rely on kind of our opinions about this question. There was a really nice Sense About Science survey in 2019 that found that, it was fairly unequivocal that researchers think that peer review is either important or really important for improving the overall quality of the article, as well as kind of protecting the scientific record, as Max and Marco have alluded to. And I think that will only have become more prescient in people's minds over the last 2 years, as both have already said. I thought about the question as do we need peer review in its current format? I mean, journal-centric, largely journal-centric, largely pre-publication. And I think that there's some really interesting and also largely closed review. So I think that there are some interesting initiatives around post-publication peer review or journal-independent peer review, and a move towards open peer review. And maybe we can talk about some of these things later in the discussion. But I think, do we need peer review? Yes. What is that form going to take in the future? I think that's an open question, and I think that's quite exciting to be thinking about what the future could look like.
And that would maybe relate to the next point that we wanted to address today. We use technology to detect text overlap, image integrity issues, statistical anomalies. Will peer reviewers eventually be replaced by artificial intelligence? What do you think, Gráinne?
So my first instinct is yes and no. So I'm sorry that it's going to be a little bit inconclusive, but yeah, that's a discussion I'm looking forward to hearing from the others. But I think it's fairly inarguable based on kind of anecdotal reports from editors, and maybe Max can speak better to this than me, as well as the data that we're seeing, that it's just harder and harder for editors to secure like reviewers who both have the expertise and have the time to complete the review, and that, that's only going to increase. I think there was a survey done from Publons, the Global State of Peer Review in 2018, and 75% of editors there said that finding and securing reviewers was the hardest part of their job. So it's obviously a huge problem. And then coupled with that is the fact that, Publons found that 50% of reviews are done by 10% of people. So that's obviously a problem. And it's a problem, first of all, of representation, because the majority of reviews are being done by the minority of reviewers. And it's also a problem of overburdening those individuals as well. It's just not sustainable to keep relying on the same people indefinitely. Not only because of, they're humans, they're not machines. And there's a risk of skewing the scientific record if we're basing a lot on very few people's opinions. So I think that it would be foolish not to think about AI and technology to support reviewers. And I think that we can talk more about what publishers should be doing to support reviewers, but I think, yes, we need to look to technology to help reviewers. But so something like Cite is a great software that's available that helps reviewers see if a reference that authors have cited is contested or it's generally accepted. So that means that a reviewer doesn't have to read around the article or the manuscript that they're reviewing. They can rely on tools to help inform them in their review. So I think that we have to introduce more tools to help reviewers. I think that just has to happen. But ultimately, in this survey that I mentioned, this Sense About Science survey, they asked people, do you think that artificial intelligence and machine learning would constitute peer review? And only 8% of people said that they thought that it would. And so I think we need machines to complement the work that is being done by experts and people with the appropriate expertise.
Yeah,
I
agree.
feel more strongly about the limitations of
Yeah,
technology.
I do agree. I think there are many fantastic tools out there that can support the work of reviewers and editors in spotting anything that constitute a red flag. But I also can understand that we are not there yet, that the machines can have this enough judgment to accurately make decisions on behalf of humans yet. What do you think, Max and Marco? Do you have a different opinion or anything else you would like to add to this?
Me first?
Okay.
Yep. I think I almost totally agree with Gráinne on this topic, but I'm a little bit maybe naive or even futuristic. I think someday we can have very advanced tools to really help with that, because the main problem right now is that doing proper peer review takes almost as much time as writing a paper. And then for the researchers, is always super complex to have a very proper allocation of time to do this job. We all know that is super important, but usually we cannot block times in your schedule officially that you are paid for to do peer review properly. And in that sense, I think all the tools that were just mentioned, I think they are great to help at this moment, but maybe in the future, some more comprehensive tool could, for instance, just call attention for the main points that really should be peer reviewed over the peer review of a machine. That could be done. I think we have already enough technology for that, and I think that could help a lot, especially if that could come together with the invitation, already some remarks, some pre-assessment, let's say. That would be amazing, and I think it would bring a huge gain for reproducibility, for integrity, for instance. Imagine a world where you can upload your data together with your manuscript, and then some artificial intelligence can just cross-check everything for you. I think everyone is going to gain with that, authors, publishers, and the whole scientific community, because we have, I think the main problem is not research misconduct, for instance, in terms of bad reports, but is questionable research practices that are related to lack of attention, for instance, in some cross-checking of tables or data, and that can cost a lot in terms of misleading data in the future for the scientific community. So in that sense, I think machines can be more accurate than human beings, more or less, but of course we need then a peer review over the peer review of the machine, at least at first, especially because there is a very subtle point that is really to assess the ideas behind the applicability, the humanity behind science should be kept. Otherwise, we may have a very, maybe not so applied or even to artificial science coming from the artificial intelligence advice only.
I also agree with Max and Gráinne. I mean, there are already tools available that can help reviewers. I remember one in one of my previous position. It was called Stat Reviewer, and it was basically giving assessment on the statistics of the manuscript. And in that specific case, we were using it as one reviewer report, and then the other bit of the review was done by a human with the review, let's say the report of the AI tool, and that was incredibly shortening the peer review times. Yeah, I agree with you, Max. I mean, in the future, I definitely see, you know, a tool, AI tool that can go and check the methods, the statistics, cross-check it with the data that are uploaded somewhere. I mean, we need data to be uploaded for reproducibility. That's the key point, I think. And then at the end you will need anyway or a peer reviewer, or at this point maybe only the editor checking you know, what the machine came out with, but I mean, we need a combination. It cannot be only machine, but it has to be, you know, human with machines, and that's it always gives the best results, in my opinion.
Definitely, yeah.
I'm sorry to jump back in, Theresa. I think I'm actually the most hesitant out of the three of us, which I'm a little bit surprised by, but that's always good to know. I was thinking, Max, when you were talking, you also work, like, you have a clinical practice. How far away do you think you are from trusting a paper that was reviewed based on artificial intelligence to change what you're doing in the clinic? And if not you, your colleagues, you know.
Yeah, that is a pretty tricky question, you know, because we already have this problem that usually sometimes practice is based on just a single opinion from a single paper that was not even very well peer-reviewed. And sometimes we have a very strong body of evidence with lots of systematic reviews and even clinical practice guidelines that can show you the way, but we cannot change behavior, showing all that data behind. So as a researcher, I can foresee that if we have a couple of papers that are cross-checked by artificial intelligence in terms of peer review, and if we have them, for instance, assessed for quality in good systematic reviews, we can easily trust the results. But for the clinician, I think we need a little more. They don't trust even in the lines, so they don't really mind the process behind it. I think they just want to have information on how to do things, and this is a little bit difficult, especially in dentistry. Probably medicine people are a little more have more literacy on research, on science, on evidence-based practices, but in dentistry that is mostly lacking, unfortunately.
Yeah. And maybe I of course the next question is completely linked to this. I mean, what has research integrity got to do with reproducibility? And I think, yeah, having AI tools that could help us also to make those checks would be very helpful. But about the center of this question, Gráinne, what are your thoughts here?
Well, I love this question. I could talk about this all day, so I won't, and because I'm really keen to hear from Max and Marco. But I think research integrity ultimately is about the protection of the scientific record. And so when people think about research integrity or research misconduct, I think most often they think of like the headline: falsification, fabrication, plagiarism, and research ethics. But I think equally important, if not more dangerous to scientific record, is the sort of thing that Max alluded to. So the lack of attention when preparing a manuscript, or the desk drawer problem, where manuscripts or findings that are not significant or null results are never published because they're not maybe interesting enough, or cherry picking, kind of relatedly cherry picking results or correlations to show a significant finding. So I think that is has the potential to be just as dangerous for skewing the scientific record towards one school of thought or another. So I think that's where reproducibility and the practices associated with it, like pre-registration or open data, can combat these kind of grey area practices that threaten the scientific record. But yeah, I've thought a lot about this from a research integrity perspective, so I'm interested in kind of open science and an active researcher's thoughts.
Well, as a open science and open access, I mean, this is more open science. I mean, that's the data. I mean, the data is the core here, and it's not only the raw data. Is also like methods, as you were saying, publishing reports, publishing protocols, all these things that can really increase the reproducibility of any work. So yeah, we'll definitely they're all interlinked. I think research integrity, open data, open science, and the reproducibility in research. So the base, in my view, is we should mandate all the data to be deposited somewhere that should be accessible, and we need tools or reviewers that are also willing to go and dig into the data, because I mean, I'm sure that not all the reviewers want to spend hours and hours going through other people's data. So we might need some, as before, tool that can help us with that. But, otherwise it's difficult.
Max, would you have something or?
Yes, I think I can just add a very little something. Yeah, the main points were already covered, but I think it's pretty easy for all participants to just follow an example. If you have a sloppy research process with sloppy notebooks with your details of your method, and if you are not careful enough on handling your data and curating your data, you may have some misspelling, some problems on typing data. For instance, there is no internal addition sometimes, and then this can ended up published. And then if some other group try to reproduce your research, first of all, they have to write you to have extra information on how you did things. This is the main problem, the first main problem. And then they start to see that you didn't follow all the steps that you should follow to do your research. And then in the end, you even don't share your data for audition. So all these things that you are talking about, they seem pretty obvious to all of us and also for the community. But in daily basis, I was just remembering this survey that was done in the Netherlands maybe 2 years ago, and they showed that half of the researchers that answered the survey, they agreed that they engage in regular basis in at least one questionable research practice. Not for intention, just because they don't take enough care, they don't have enough time, for instance, to help mentoring young researchers. So we have lots of things that you should really take care of. And this has to do with research integrity. This has to do with open science principles. And this for sure is going to be the core value or the core point to assure reproducibility in science.
Yeah. And then what would you say about the statement that during peer review of a manuscript, it's too late to bring up reproducibility? And maybe Marco, maybe you could start answering this question this time?
Sure. Well, I actually don't agree with the statement, and yeah, we can bring up reproducibility during peer review. Both ways, from the reviewer point of view, giving the reviewer, for example, a checklist, actually giving it to the authors during the submission, and to the reviewers, during the review time, so they can both have the checklist, they can go through it, and kind of standardize also a little bit the submission process and the reviewing process. At the same time, we can support, for example, the computational reproducibility through peer review of the codes itself when there is coding involved. These maybe with again an AI tool, and I think the last bit during maybe not during but before peer review or before submission, I really see protocols and method articles published. They should help the authors that is then submitting the reviews, the reviewer when they go analyze the method that they use. If it's already published and is already peer reviewed, then it might have a different value, and then the reviewer they just go and have to analyze not only the main thing that are results and discussion as most of the people do, but they really have to go in and dig the methods, and I mean you should be able to spot mistakes, but also the methods from the author side, they have to be well written, very detailed. Like in my personal experience, when I was in the lab, I tried many times to reproduce other people's research, and I basically never did. I was never able to get the same exact results of that article. And there are a lot of bias that me myself as a young scientist I wasn't producing, but then there was a lot of lack of pieces in the methods when you go and try to redo the same experiments. So it is definitely important that during peer review these things are checked, and I think we as publisher we need to give the authors and the reviewers tools to check this. So again, checklist I think is one of the easiest reports and protocols published, and yeah, then we have to take it from there, and we have to rely of course on the thoroughness of the reviewers.
Max, from both the reviewer and author perspective, do you think this is constantly included in the peer review process, or not?
This is actually improving over time. We have done a couple of some research on that, on for instance, assessing how much peer reviewers and especially the journal editors really engage actively on the process of using, for instance, reporting guidelines to help to report better and with more accuracy the manuscripts. And we can see that in the past it was very little supported by publishers, editors, and peer reviewers. Nowadays it's more and more common to have this as a mandate. You have to submit checklists together, but usually they are, as I say, usually a bit empty because they are just there and people don't really use it actively. So we still have to work more in that sense. Very few journals really have the promotion of an active peer review training to, in fact, assure reproducibility. But we are improving and improving and improving. And as a peer reviewer, I always have this very bad memory to remember everything that even I should take care of. So it's super useful to use reporting guidelines, checklists to help you. And then all my review processes, they are super boring in the beginning. According to this reporting guideline, you are missing this, and this information, and then I go to the other things, to the content, to the data. But I think it's answering the question is one of the best moments to bring up reproducibility. The peer review process, it helps us a lot. For me, it was the first time that I learned from reporting guidelines, for instance, 20 years ago, when they first asked me through the peer review process to really report things better. So even as authors, we always learn from this process.
I remember well from my PI when I was also a PhD candidate. When I first wrote the methods of my very first paper, he made me ask my mother to read it and to see to check if my mother was able to understand that. Of course, thinking on this problematic, thinking on one's ability to accurately register what I was putting down on paper, and that they could then follow those instructions. Yeah. Gráinne, maybe you also want to share something about this topic?
I love that
Shall we
story
move
that your
to the
mother
next
had to proofread your articles. That's really funny. I don't think my dad would have accepted that request. Yeah, I think that I agree with what both people are saying here, and what everyone is saying. But we've all sort of mentioned methodology in one way or another, and yeah, I think that really is where describing your methodology is really where things can be improved very well in the peer review process for improving reproducibility. I mean, ideally, you would be able to submit something like a registered report in advance of starting the research, so that could be reviewed. So not only is your methodology reporting getting reviewed, but the actual planned methodology is getting reviewed and improved by your peers. So I mean, Max mentioned when he was an earlier career researcher getting introduced to reporting guidelines through peer review. I think that having peers that aren't maybe your direct supervisor critiquing and advising on a research protocol would be hugely beneficial for early career researchers, but also for more established researchers who maybe have some degree of blinkers on for their desired research protocol and maybe haven't considered the methodology from another perspective. I think that it's fairly clear that methods reporting isn't sufficient, and I think that as publishers we need to do more to support this. I don't know if people are probably aware of the Reproducibility project for cancer biology, and they were trying to repeat the results of 193 experiments, and so that the headline finding that stuck with me from that was that they found that in the 193 experiments, not one had enough detail in the original paper to design an experiment to repeat it. And I just thought that was really alarming. So I think that peer review process is not as Max said, is a perfect time to bring it up, because you can do the best experiment you want, but if you are so close to it you can't describe it well enough for an external party to do it, then it's not reproducible.
Yes, I think the burden of enabling reproducibility is very much on the authors here, as they need to be then very clear on what they've done and how they did things, so that one would be able to repeat and find similar results, or at least corroborating results. But then in the next point that we wanted to talk about today, and maybe we could ask Max to share his thoughts first, is what would you like to see journals and publishers doing to support and incentivize and recognize peer reviewers? Because in the same way that it is on the author's side to come very clear about how that this research is concluded, it is also a great responsibility on the reviewers to then be able first to identify that something has not been properly reported, and also to point out maybe mistakes, and hopefully that they are fixable within the context of the peer review process.
Yeah, this is a interesting and also tricky question. I think we just started to really wonder about it not so long ago, maybe 10 to 15 years ago. And the first thought probably for many people is, why not people are get paid for doing peer review. This is the first, yeah, if you are among researchers in the coffee break, everyone comes out with this idea again and again. But we have enough data from other research fields that reimbursement is not always the best option in terms of make sure that you're going to have quality at the end of the process. So I'm not saying that you should not pay us, Karger or someone else, but I'm saying that we need to promote more research on see what kind of, and really investigate what kind of practice can help. I think the first step is, of course, training, providing formal training, not only the training that is a little bit not active, that people can subscribe if they want, but maybe promoting in big congresses in any field, a sort of task force together with the association to do proper peer review training. That would be the first thing, not only to have more people engaged, but mostly to have more quality in the process. I think also, yeah, training basically, and maybe promoting together with the research associations more evidence on what we should do about peer review in the future to have a good and appropriated peer review process, and supporting the initiatives that give some reward, like counting credits, hours, things that people can use to prove that they worked on that, could be great. I'm super also enthusiastic with the open peer review idea, and also giving credit to peer review, public credit. That would be great, but I can acknowledge that we are not ready for that yet as a society, as a scientific community, because we are afraid of telling the truth and putting our name on the bottom of it, most of all. But if I have to sign a peer review, I do it better. I feel more rewarded if I'm acknowledged together in the manuscript. My name is there. I'm also contributing to the quality of that. And if we can count that and promote researchers on account of the work that they do as peer reviewers, I think we may have enough to have more people engaged in the process with quality, with their hearts and minds totally in the process. So maybe it's not about money, it's more about proper recognition, a proper reward of the process of peer reviewing. And that should be not only from the side of the publishers, but all scientific community, and especially the institutions that pay our salaries. They should take that in account for distributing grants, for promoting people. I think that would be the way to go, definitely.
Yeah, I agree with you. And while we are at Karger, we've been working very hard on trying to at least not into we've been working also in increasing how improving the ways that we engage and recognize with all the researchers in our ecosystems, but also in showcasing it better. And at the end of the presentation, I will share a link to a page that we have recently launched, where we have displayed many resources also for training reviewers, and there are courses. We have also since last year, every single reviewers that review for Karger, they have access to the certificates that is straightforward, but also to courses. And of course, if someone is interested in sharing that information with their younger peers, that is very welcome as well. But maybe Marco can talk a little bit about what we've been doing and thinking and discussing internally in terms of recognition of peer reviewers in the context of open science.
Yep. Yeah. Well, Max, you already touched a lot of points that I wanted to discuss here. For example, yeah, the pay of the reviewer. Yeah, and there are many reports where they show that the majority of the people interviewed, they don't really want to be paid, but they want to be recognized. So we need to develop that. At the same time, I had multiple discussions with colleagues everywhere, and sometimes it comes up, that maybe having a contract with the peer reviewer with, I don't know, 30, 50 euros, pay, which is nothing, but it gives the reviewer a kind of moral bound to review. So, you have a contract, you're going to receive a little bit of money, and then you're kind of morally obligated to, review fast and review in the time that you were asked for. So this is one. At the same time, thinking we also trial it, giving discounts on the next submissions to reviewer. It wasn't really well taken, but I think maybe a kind of in-between method could be, we could give the reviewers a full waivers to any journal in our portfolio after 3-5 reviews or something like that, kind of a fidelity card. That I would like to try it. On the open science and the open peer review, I love it. This is my thing since a long time, in different position as well. So I mean, I'm all for it. I think we need to go over this kind of fear of reviewing senior scientists, especially with the junior one, and they want to be as honest as possible. On the other side, we will publish reviews only for accepted articles. So the rejected one, they will stay behind the gate, and nobody's going to see them. So only accepted articles. So it means that maybe the first round of the review would be a little bit harsh, but indeed, the outcome is an acceptance. So they will both be happy. On top of that, to add recognition to the reviewers, I really liked to add DOI to the reviewer report. In that way, you can cite your own review report. You can show it to your institution and say, okay, look, I mean, I did 5 reviews this month. It took me 20 hours, and on the other side, also from the institutional parts, they will definitely need to switch and give you guys from PhD, postdocs, associate professor, and professor a time, I don't know, 10%, 20% of your time to do editorial work. But this is part of the research, and I mean, it's a little bit outside, your normal, okay, going to the lab, going to the clinic, and so on. But it's part of science, and all the institutions know. I mean, they want you to publish, right? So at the same time where you have time allocated to write your research, I would like to see institution allowing their members to have the time to do editorial work, from being the editor-in-chief to a journal, to the associate editor or the reviewer. You have 10 hours, 5 hours a week where you do only that. That will increase also the acceptance rates of the reviewers in that case, I think. And I had some notes. Let me see if I touch everything. The kind of recognitions I really like. For example, the Pablon system, where you kind of automatically get it up to your profile, and then you can showcase it. You can put it in your CV and whatever. But yeah. I'm not against paying reviewers. Maybe we should not pay them as much as they're paid by their institution by the hour. That will never be sustainable. But giving a kind of token or a little sum to morally bound them to do the work as fast as possible, and at the same time give back to them the recognition that they want.
Yeah.
I think
Gráinne,
sorry, just to jump in. I think that I agree that the idea of paying reviewers is a little bit fraught. Like, I think that everyone is in agreement that there has to be greater recognition of the time and effort that reviewers are spending. But when you look at the reasons why people decline to review, is the most common reasons are I don't have the expertise and I don't have the time. And I think compensating reviewers in some way is really important, but ultimately it's not going to give the journal paying you something for your review isn't going to create more hours in the day for you to do your research work and do your clinical work and do your supervision work. So then I think the kind of next logical step is, so you have professional reviewers that maybe only work 50% of the time in the university, and the other 50% of the time they are reviewing, and that's their job, and they're compensated from journals. But I think that goes back, that's an option. My concern is that goes back to something we talked about earlier, that the majority of reviews are done by the minority of reviewers, and would that be exacerbated by like a self-selection a group of people who decide to become professional reviewers? So I don't know the answer. I don't have a great answer to it, but I think that what we can do as publishers for sure is enable greater recognition of the work that reviewers are doing. So like Marco said, with Publons, or maybe both Marco and Max talked about open review, where your name is there, so it's easier for you as a researcher in your institution to see the work that an individual is doing. And then I'm in agreement that I think that having this time given to researchers to do that, or have that factor into getting a grant, is the kind of recognition that would be sustainable. And I think the other thing that journals can do to support reviewers is make it easier for new reviewers to enter into the pool. So I think the Royal Society did a survey last year that saw that like just over half of the respondents started reviewing as PhD students, whereas the others didn't start until they were postdocs and principal investigators. So there's some sort of barrier there for people to get into the reviewer pool in the first place. So I think that it would benefit everybody in the system if the number of reviewers increased, and so there was a lower burden on everybody for a peer review. So I think that there's something that journals can and should be doing there to make it easier for people to join the reviewer pool, especially to increase the diversity of people who are in the pool in the first place.
Thank you, Gráinne. And then we would go for the last topic that we selected to discuss today. And maybe Max, maybe you could share your thoughts on this, as the question is, what one thing would you say is important to a reviewer when considering the reproducibility of the manuscript they are reviewing? And then after Max shares his views, maybe then we can open for questions from the audience.
One thing that I could say is get yourself trained. This is the first thing. So there is enough free resources from Publons, from publishers in general, and you can find free tools to be trained, to be certificated. I think that is a very nice process to go through. I did some training after I was many years doing peer review, and it's amazing the amount of things that you can learn. This is the first thing, but I could also add, maybe you can, after you are trained, visit the Equator Network webpage, take a look on the reporting guidelines that are over there. And yeah, especially, maybe we covered this before, but I would like to advise everyone to really block some time in the schedule for doing peer review. I think that would be one of the things that we could do ourselves, because we are not officially paid to do peer review, but we sometimes have a little more freedom to make our schedules in research hours, let's say. So you can block a couple of hours per week or per month to do proper peer review. Sometimes it's not so easy to do so, but if you just put in your schedule, then you're going to be there at that moment to do exactly that activity. That can help a lot. Then you put time. If you have proper training, if you access the proper tools and if you have time allocated for that, I think you can do a great job as a peer reviewer.
Yeah. So yes, and I just wanted to link to what you just said here about training, and wanted to remind our audience that Karger does offer several resources on how to peer review. We also have a very good set of guidelines for reviewers that's publicly available, and we have recently launched a form that one can then apply to become a peer reviewer. So you can volunteer, and then you are no longer dependent on the process of someone nominating you to be a peer reviewer in case they cannot when they are invited to review an article. So and then of course, yes, I believe that also exercising the role of being an author, that's also will help you improve your skills in being a reviewer. I will just check if we do have if we have questions from the audience. There's a question from Neil Adams, and he is asking if you do any journals at Karger use double-blind peer review. If not, why not?
Maybe I can quickly jump in, and then I'm going to hand over to Marco because I bet he has a lot of things to say on this. So yes, we do have a journal that uses double-blind peer review, but all journals bar 1 or 2 use a single blind peer review. So that means that the reviewers know who the author is, but the authors never find out who the reviewers are. Marco, I'm going to hand straight over to you because I imagine you want to talk about this.
Preference to the editors. Yeah, we have 1 or 2 journals that have a double peer review. I'm leaning more to the opposite. So open everything and everybody knows everybody, and that's it. We should, in my opinion, move to a more transparent way of doing peer review. They're not in the beginning of last century, and peer review is not done by letters anymore. So it's 2020. We have to be transparent. Also, the authors, they would like to know who is, the guy that is reviewing you. You can spark an interesting scientific discussion after it. Potentially you can also create enemies, but I mean we kind of go and check that the peer review is not offensive and so on. So I will move to the opposite. Instead of a double blind peer review, open peer review where everybody knows everybody, or maybe not even during the peer review. During the peer review we can have it double blinded, and we assure that there are no biases. And then at the end, once the article is accepted, we just reveal the names. Yeah, there might be some biases. I was actually talking with one of my editors in the last conference where I was, and he noticed with another journal where he was involved that, for example, Italian reviewers, I'm just using Italian because I'm Italian, but Italian reviewers are accepting more paper if they're coming from Italy. So we should. It's interesting. I mean, I never thought about it, and Gráinne, maybe we should, get a report and check, if we have these kind of biases. So
that's interesting. Max, do you have a preference as a researcher or an author and a reviewer? Do you have a preference on a peer review style when thinking about like reproducibility?
Not really, but I really like this idea of having at first it double-blinded to avoid this, especially the battle between young researchers and the big sharks, let's say. And after that, if that would be open and if everyone would agree on that, that would be just amazing, Then you know that your name is going to be there. I think we could reduce quite a lot the problems with the whole process. Yeah, better than that, just relying in everything open from the registering reporting and then going through a whole open science process from the beginning to the end with materials also shared. That would be amazing. That would be the ultimate goal, I think, of doing science properly.
Okay, so we reached 1 hour in our webinar. Oh, it just came one question. Do we have time to answer one more question from the online? Yes. Okay. So we have a question from Simon Turner. Is often peer review is seen as taking up previous time from other research administrative activities. Other than remuneration as a benefit of peer review, do you think it's possible to reframe reviewing as a benefit to reviewers, such as by keeping at the head of latest research trends and seeing what's taking place? How do you think publishers could promote this and show the value of reviewing?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question of the psychological side of things. I think that Max mentioned that when you sit around over coffee, people say like, I should be paid as a reviewer. But is there any benefit to changing the psychology of how people see review, and that is it a way to get ahead of what's going to come out in a review? I don't know. I think it's interesting. I mean, the only survey data that I can think of was this Publons report that asked, why do you review? And this is 2018, so maybe it's a little out of date. But the most common answer was, reviewers see it as part of their job. And I wonder how much keeping abreast of the field feeds into that. I don't know, what do you think? Marco and Max, I think, are maybe a little bit closer to talking to reviewers.
Well, I mean, that's a kind of normal part of reviewing and being an editor, so you are abreast or on top of all the new bits. So that, I think, should be already embedded in. Maybe we should promote it a little bit more if it's not clear. I mean, in my head, I had it that a reviewer wants to review because he wants to read the latest. An editor also does the editor because so he's updated with the latest things that are coming up in his field, which is not only. I mean, if you're an editor for 1, 2, 3 journals, then you have a bit of the spectrum of everything that is coming up. Maybe we should promote it a little bit more, but yeah, it's not simple and it's definitely tricky. Max, do you have anything to add?
Yes, a very short thought. In most of the rewarding systems for promotion, for instance, or for grant assessment, people really acknowledge when you have a senior position as editor-in-chief, for instance, or if you are part of the board. There is very little recognition for peer reviewing, for the people that do all this great job that is behind the whole process. So I would say that, of course, we could think about money, about remuneration, about hours allocated in your schedule, but I would say that if you put this carrot in front of the researchers of having a greater recognition for that amount of work, and then if you really can quantify that through Publons and show the quality, because also it's possible to have the quality of peer reviewers in comparison to the peers in terms of amount of words that you use. For instance, if you do a sloppy review like one phrase, then Publons also show that. And all these things together could really be the recognition that we are looking for as researchers. We usually go after basically surviving, promotion, and grants. These are the three things that we want. Of course, first we want to be hired, and then we want to be promoted, and then we need grants to continue to work. And if you want to make money, we probably would find another job because researchers are never rich. So the carrot should be more in terms of recognition, you know. You can be more recognized by your peers if you really have that standing forward. That would be the way to go, I think. But it's tricky. It should be tested, definitely.
Thank you, Max. I would like to thank everybody for coming today and being here with us today. And the last points you stressed, Max, are very aligned with what we have been trying to do. And we are indeed very grateful for the time and all the energy that each reviewer gives to ensure that an article is both accurate and reproducible before it is published. And with this in mind, and hoping to support all involved in peer review, we have then compiled all Karger's initiatives on engaging and rewarding researchers in all the different roles and career stages that they can have in one page, which one can then access by the QR code that is being displayed. And in this page, one will also find out the set of courses on how to peer review, this guideline for reviewers that I mentioned before. So I invite everybody to check it out, and I would like to thank you all again for your insights and for participating today. A special thanks to our panelists. It was a really great pleasure to be your host today. And if you have further questions, feel free to contact us. It could be even by the contact information in each journal specifically, or in the contact info also shared in the engage and recognize page. Yeah, so thank you so much. It was very great, and I wish you all a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. It's great to see everybody. Thanks for the discussion.
Thank
you very much. It was super lovely. I learned a lot. See you around. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.